Article 3.
Okay, so sorry, I just started the recording. So good evening. Call this meeting of the Town of Thompson Planning and Zoning Commission Subcommittee on Subdivision Regulations special meeting to order. It is Tuesday, March 9th, 2021, 7:03 p.m. We are meeting via Zoom. We will begin with a roll call of members present. Mr. Lenke.
John B. Lanky present.
Mr. Krogel.
Mike Krogel present.
Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill present.
Mr. Poplawski.
Dave Poplawski present.
Mr. Blackmer.
Mr. Blackmer present.
Joseph Brody Brown is present. We had Charlene for a minute. We just lost her, so hopefully she'll be able to get back in. And so I will keep an eye out for that. Okay, item 2 is review and discussion of the subdivision regulations. And so we can pick up I'm not sure.
I think it's Article 3.
Okay, yeah. So the issue right now, hold on a second, because
and I just gotta hook my headphones up.
Okay, so Tira's back, and she'll be able to advance the screen when she is ready.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Oh, look at that. I don't know what was going on with my phone. Okay, just in the nick of time. All right, so I guess we will proceed here as we have done, just trying to read through the draft and stop where there's notes. And we can all, I think we should also decide if this is actually the format of the way we want to continue, because I don't know about you guys, but I actually find this way a little more difficult than when I was putting the discussion guides together. This was based on people wanting to see the changes in the document. So you guys can tell me how you feel about it, but we'll read through and see how far we get. First note, section 1, letter A, just a note here that this was initially indicated as plan of subdivision recommended for 4 lots or more, but I think Alvin and I both determined that that is actually supposed to be 3. So that
3 lots.
Yeah. So that's factual. We don't really need to revisit that. So the first substantive comment here was provided by David Held on letter B. The preliminary plan of a proposed subdivision or re-subdivision should be drawn on tracing paper or a print thereof and show. And then it's got these categories. If you can see over here in the sidebar, this is a comment from David Held. This is an informal process to have a dialogue between applicants and the commission for preliminary feedback. I wouldn't specify any particular plan requirements for this. Applicants will provide plan details for such discussion commensurate with the complexity of the project. Some simple projects could be discussed in a fruitful manner with the back of a napkin, yada, yada, yada. His point being that this isn't a formal process, so why are we formalizing the requirements for an informal review? I tend to agree with that. What do you guys think?
Well, I agree with some of that.
Some, but not all, Alvin?
Well, I mean, one of my concern was right here, minimum class D, it should be B or C. But that's, that's just a small point.
But it's also, I think David's point, and the point that I concur with, is that none of this is particularly necessary for the informal consultation, but that this, whatever your survey class would be an application requirement for the formal application.
Right. Well, why don't we say that up here in, a preliminary plan of a proposed subdivision? why don't we sum in there, it'll be not as formal or whatever.
Yep.
There's a different wording should be up here.
Yeah, and I think we have an analog to that in the actual zoning regulations that we can probably make that language very similar.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
How particular is a Class D? Is that, you gotta have some standards. You don't want it drawn on a used wet napkin and expect us to know what it is.
Good point.
Well, I think we'll see what the requirements is for that down here, but maybe not. So let's just go in order. This, Cindy, is more for you, and we'll come back to this in a second. Letter C, Cindy, they're notifying the ZEO, not the commission, ahead of the meeting, correct?
Yes, yes, they
Yeah.
do. Mhm.
Yeah, we want to be as accurate as possible. All right, so let's take a look here at the formal application requirements. So this is timetable, required documents. Okay, so yeah, so let's look down here at required documents and see how this matches up to what the actual expectations are, because I think this is where you want to have your the level of survey required. And I'm sorry, this formatting is so squirrely. All right, well, let's read them in order. A written application completed in full on forms prescribed by the commission, signed by the applicant. And I didn't think there was any questions there. B, a non-refundable application fee of $350 per lot shown. Sidebar comment here again from David Held, suggesting to remove specific fee amounts because then you have to formally amend your regulations if you amend your fees. I think we ran into that before.
Right.
So that would be a reference to the table of fees.
I think that's a smart change.
Yeah. Same, well, technical review fee if necessary. C was the sanitary report. We discussed this before again, and the consensus did seem to be that the commissioners agreed with the logic that what is actually required is confirmation from NDDH that they have approved the project, not the sanitary report, because you guys aren't really reviewing the sanitary report.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure we all still agree. 2 copies, well, 2 24 by 36 copies and 15 11 by 17 reductions. My suggestion here is, again, that we align that language to what you guys put in the zoning regulations, which was to require an absolute minimum of copies, but also say that more may be requested by the commission to reduce the paper burden. Stop me if you disagree.
Could it be more or less?
Cindy, do you have the zoning regs at home with you?
Yeah, I can go get them. Hold
I got
on.
one right here.
Oh, you've got them, Joe. Joe's got them, Cindy.
Get to page 15.
Hey, while we're waiting, did anybody else dial into that webinar today?
No.
No, I did not. I was working.
Yeah, I know, awkward time of day if you're not actually being paid to dial in.
Me and Cindy did the marathon one Saturday, so I was all zoned.
I
in.
heard. How was it?
That was, my opinion, it was great. I think, everybody, shut up. The comment with the Zoom made it easier. There's what, 635
Yes.
attendees or something? So I
Wow.
mean, it was
Yeah.
massive.
Yes.
Just the book, the value of the book that I received, has this tremendous knowledge right in that book, so it was great.
Yeah, Charlene and Missy and I went 2 years ago with Cindy to that, and it was in person at Wesleyan. I'll tell you what, 8-9 hours in, that is a long day to sit in a lecture hall chair.
I've got the language here, Tira.
Okay, go ahead and read that, Joe.
At a minimum, a PDF file and 2 copies of all required documents for each application needing approval shall be submitted and accompanied by the same number of copies of a site plan on 11 by 17 inch paper. The ZEO or the commission, as applicable, may require additional copies.
I kind of thought that language was good. It reduces the required paper burden while still letting you ask for more if you have people who really prefer the hard copies, but that's up to you guys if you want to continue that consistently into this document.
It shouldn't conflict. It should be the same.
Yeah. I think we should take that same language. Right, and we had talked about being able to pull it up on the screen at town hall. Not this screen. Going in the future when we're back in person.
Right.
I think,
right. Which, yeah, having the PDF copy allows you to do that.
Exactly. So I think that's the way to go.
Okay. All right, so just reading on, we're still looking for the survey requirements. An erosion and sediment control plan, no comments there. A certificate of public convenience and necessity as required by section 16-262M of the general statutes of the state of Connecticut if water is to be supplied by a water company by means of a community water supply system as defined in that section. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that is probably still the same. Copies of all other approvals filed with local, state, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so here's a sidebar comment from me. On letter H, state highway or town road connection, where a proposed street or storm drainage system joins with a state highway or town road, the applicant shall present a letter or other documentation giving evidence that the construction plans have been submitted to the Connecticut Department of Transportation or the Town of Thompson Public Works Director with an application for a permit for such connection in accordance with the general statutes of the state of Connecticut. Any applicant who receives a Connecticut Department of Transportation permit, which requires an alteration to the plan as submitted and approved by the Commission, shall resubmit that portion of the plan for review and approval by the Commission. Connections to town roadways require submission and approval by the Town of Thompson Public Works Director. So my sidebar comment here is this a place to ask the developer to provide a justification of the new road? So this is a statement, but it probably should have been phrased more as a question, if the town only wants to accept new roads with a compelling transit connection, which is what we've posited in the POCD. So my question is, do we want to start articulating it here? Is this the point in this process where we start to make that a necessity? I'm asking.
You know my stance on it. I'll go on record. I don't think that limiting this to private ways and home ownership of the road is something we should solely provide for the town of Thompson. I think eliminating the possibility of roads, cul-de-sacs, being a town road is a mistake.
Well, there's 2 or 3 things in that statement, Dave, and I'm neither agreeing nor disagreeing in this response. Just clarifying. So I don't think that I have actually suggested there will never be an accepted town road in a subdivision. The suggestion is that the road must show genuine utility, a compelling connective purpose. And yes, I am still suggesting that cul-de-sacs should be way at the bottom of the list of things you should be considering for town acceptance for the reasons that have been stated previously. Still understanding that there's room for discussion to that later. But I think the question of the justification for whether a road is to be an accepted or a private road might be a part of what you would want to include in your application requirements. Is that helpful?
I agree with that. It should be, if we wanted to articulate it, you know, what's the proposal? Is it a private way, a cul-de-sac, a municipal road? You know, what's their intention with the application? But one other comment, the state highway and or town road, because you could have a connecting, you know, you could have where it's joining both the state highway and exiting on a town road. So rather than or, I would put and, or, you know, and or.
And that's up in the second line, you mean here, right?
Oh, no, right, Connecticut Department of Transportation or the Town of Thompson Public Works Director. Sorry. Yeah, one more sentence down too. Yep.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay.
But I think, Mr. Chairman, I think if we, you know, we get their intention, kind of similar to what Woodstock did on theirs, because I read through the correspondence through Woodstock, and they ask in the application, you know, what's your intention with the application?
Mhm.
What do you mean by that, Dave? Yeah,
Yeah, what intention of what?
Well, when they're coming in with their intent, is it a private, they coming in with a private street? Are they coming in with something they want the town to accept at the end? They ask them to call it out. I forgot what page it's on. I don't
Is
have.
that the one I sent out? That's the one I sent out Monday, right?
correct.
The long one,
Yeah.
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 It was probably halfway, 3/4 through it, but I found that interesting that they actually asked the developer what the intent was early on, you know, when they filed the application.
It could be private or public.
That's right.
The intent private or public.
It was private, public, or I think it said homeowner, HOA too. It was descriptive.
Yeah,
So I like
Yeah,
the way
and
they worded it.
Yeah, I think Rich sent that to me because he thought it was a good example and obviously a neighboring community. So a comparable community in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and if I can, I'll try to go back to it to see where it actually was, but. That's my input for that.
Okay.
One. I think that, you know,
Hey, Joe, do you want to pass the hosting back to me? It'll make it easier later before I
Yeah,
forget.
definitely.
So what do you guys think about that? I mean, you know, I think I hear consensus there, but I don't want to assume.
It only gets you in trouble.
No, I think I would, concur with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's another instance in which we are sort of pushing off, kicking the can down the road on deciding at what level you want to accept. But if there is a presumption that the commission is going to reserve the right to accept a road as a municipal, proposed to be a municipal road or not, it does seem fair and above board to state it out in your application requirements.
Right.
All right, so let's just push on. I think we can say that's general consensus on that. 2 copies of stormwater runoff report, no comments there. Agreement signed by the applicant and by the owner of the land, if other than the applicant. Granting officials of the town permission, looks fine. This is more a stylistic one. The applicant shall send notice of the proposed subdivision to landowners as determined based upon the assessor's records within a radius of 500 feet by certified mail. I mean, that's just abutters, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yes, it's abutters. It's abutters. And you don't have to do return receipt requested now. Unless you want to, but it's not a state statute anymore. You can just do by certified mail.
Certified mail.
Is
Within a radius of 500 feet. Well, where do you put,
There
And
you go.
it's
it should be
500
the
feet.
borders, the boundary lines,
Abutters.
500 feet from the boundary lines.
Why can't you just say, abutters within 500 feet of boundary line?
That sounds like it works
Exactly.
to me.
Yeah. Okay, I can make that change. Yeah, that's an awful lot of word to just describe abutters. Receipt. Do you still require receipt of notice, Cindy? With the certifieds, right?
Yes, the certified,
Yeah.
yes, so they have to bring them into me. Yes.
Okay. Commission may require an environmental assessment where it determines yada yada. Okay, so it looks like these, scrolling back up, don't get dizzy. Looks like these things under section 1, letter B, are actually the things that are intended to go in the actual application, but they are not there. So let's look at these with the idea of they're getting cut and pasted under the actual application requirements. Subdivision name boundaries, that's all good. Record, owner of record. Existing and proposed lines of streets, ways, easements, blah, 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 it looks good. If anybody has any comments on these, stop me. Proposed system of drainage, so, okay, and then what was your preferred survey there, Alvin? Because now we're talking about a formal
well,
application.
In our zoning regulations, either B or C survey minimum.
So we're just aligning those to the zoning regs.
Right.
Yep. Names, location, widths of adjacent streets, topography of the land in a general manner. Any comments on any of the rest of those? Oops.
Make sure you 3 lots, not 4.
Okay, all right, so that's going to be a cut and paste tomorrow. We already went through all this. Same thing here on section 4. Cindy, that's you determining that it's complete, not the commission. We can probably make that change right now. And has been received by 2 copies shall be retained for study by the commission and other interested agencies. But we're already asking for 2 copies to be submitted, right? So is this a redundancy?
Well, it doesn't hurt.
So I mean, so it's not the applicant has to give it to inland wetlands, right?
Yes, the applicant does, yes.
So then, yeah, it seems redundant that we are retaining. Yeah,
What we've already been given?
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I feel like this is unnecessary. I'm just going to give it a strike through. If a subdivision abuts or includes land in another town, 3 additional copies shall be submitted. Let's do this. The applicant shall submit 3 additional copies to, and I assume that's the COG.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever had in the time that I have been involved either as a commissioner or on staff with a subdivision that included land in another town. Does anybody have experience of that in the town of Thompson? Is that the practice?
Well, I don't think it's so much as the practice that you have to submit anything within in another town to NECOG, whether it's subdivisions, whether it's special permits for planning and zoning. I believe it's a state statute.
Okay.
What about if it abuts, Webster or Dudley or
Not Webster. You have to notify Webster. You have to notify towns in another state. I don't know where if we say that any place, but you have to do that too.
All right, so let's add a note here. Add process for when yeah. We don't, are they, just curious, there are no subdivisions in Thompson that are also subdivisions in Massachusetts, are there? Up near that end near the lake, are there?
I was just thinking that we've got one where it's not really a subdivision, but you got that, we just dealt with it in,
South Shore Road.
yeah, where it transverses, it goes across the town line, a state line.
Mhm.
That's a single parcel, or is that multiple parcels?
Well, that was a single parcel in a development, if I'm not mistaken.
So it was a part of a general subdivision that somehow includes land in 2 separate towns in 2 separate states.
Except that I think it was just one lot that was involved in that. I don't think the rest of it was in 2 states. Any part of it was in 2 states. It was all Connecticut. I might be wrong on that. No,
I don't know if that area up there is subdivisions. We can look on the I have enough of the assessors cards to figure out if it's a subdivision, but a lot of those lots, some of those lots says property in Massachusetts, because I was dealing with one recently for a gentleman to build on. They're small lots. That's an
They're
area.
small lots, but they straddle the state.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the area, that was one of the areas that was in R20 that we changed to residential residential rural ag, which, you know, in my opinion, that's for the zoning stuff, but should go back to, you know, something smaller. Anyways,
All right. Continuing here, commission shall transmit copies of the maps and plans to other boards. Blah, 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 blah. This is probably actually the ZEO. The commission isn't doing that directly. Time for decision, elapses prior to the 35th day. That stuff all looks good to me. Did you have anything that stuck out to you in any of this section as you were looking at it, Cindy?
mm-mm.
All this stuff is really your bailiwick. Commission may waive the application fee requirement for resubmission, submission or revision of a previously approved, submission of a plan solely for the purpose of correcting an existing illegal subdivision. Sure.
Okay, the first.
This is 3, we know. Public hearing shall be held on any subdivision of 3 lots or more. In addition, a public hearing regarding application for approval of subdivision of less than 3 lots shall be held by the commission if in its judgment the circumstances require such action. The commission shall hold a public hearing on any application for a re-subdivision. So we've got another David Held note here. In acting on a subdivision application, the commission is acting in a purely administrative capacity to determine if the application meets the criteria outlined in the regulations. If the application meets these criteria, the commission is legally required to approve the application. Requiring a public hearing for this process is a waste of time and resources for both the commission and applicants. It's also an invitation for irritated members of the public who participate in a hearing and aren't aware of the commission's obligation to approve complying applications. So they spend hours talking about things that aren't relevant to the application process. Re-subdivision must have a public hearing per state statute. Cindy, do you concur with that reasoning? I mean, the re-subdivision appears to be clear.
Right, but for 3 lots or less, that's what he's saying, on 3 lots or less, right? Well, no.
No, I think he's saying in general. In acting on a subdivision application, the commission is acting in a purely administrative capacity to determine if the application meets the criteria outlined in the regulations. As I read this, and maybe somebody feels differently, he's saying that the public hearing process for subdivision is inefficient, unwieldy, unnecessary. I mean, however you want to refer to it. It may be the custom, but if I read his note here correctly, he is suggesting that it is only required for re-subdivision.
Well, then,
by statute.
I guess we would have to check the statute on that. I don't know. The second thing is, sure, if you're talking about 3, 4, 5, but when you start getting into large subdivisions, I mean, I think you need a public hearing, and I think you need the public's input. I can't imagine. You need to notify people that their property next to them is going to have 18, 20 lots. I mean, isn't that the purpose of the public hearing, is to notify surrounding property owners that there's going to be a disruption in where they're living?
It is definitely
agree.
it's definitely the purpose.
Right.
What David is suggesting, and I'm not taking a side either way here. What he's suggesting is that the public hearing process effectively muddies the waters, because if the application conforms to the requirements, what he's suggesting is that it doesn't matter how many people come out to complain about it. If it fits the requirements, it must be approved. So what does anybody gain in the public hearing process?
Knowledge.
So the notification, you can understand what they gain because now they know.
Right.
But if they have no legal right to obstruct it, what is the point of giving them the opportunity to behave as if they could obstruct it? That's, and again, I'm not taking sides on this. I'm merely arguing the point as it's presented.
Well, because they're taxpayers, it's their community. They'd like to know what's going on in their community. I mean, I think not having a public hearing on a large subdivision, you're blindsiding the neighbors. It's like,
Well, so the difference, I mean, if they're notified regardless of if there's a public hearing, right? They're notified.
no, I don't think so.
What was that thing we just read about abutters?
Well, that's because of the public hearing, isn't it?
I thought so.
Yeah.
I think that might be the assumption, but let's see how it reads.
Yeah, you're right.
The applicant shall send notice of the proposed subdivision to landowners, to abutters within 500 feet. We'll just change the language here. Return receipt requested and mailed not less than 10 days nor more than 30 days. Okay, so this does say before the scheduled public hearing.
Okay.
Right.
Because you don't send a notice if you get a two lot subdivision. You don't send a notice to anybody.
Yeah, but so okay, so that's an interesting point, because if the notification, well, so I mean, I guess there's several steps to this, right? If the purpose is the notification, right? If the purpose of having a public hearing is a notification, well, that's not what a public hearing is for. A public hearing is to hear the testimony of the public, right? To assist in the making of a decision, right?
Yes, you're right. But if all your regulations, and this goes with zoning too, if that application is complied with all the regulations, then it's your responsibility to approve it because it has applied. But that's also in zoning.
Right, and I agree with you, Cindy. And so I'm sympathetic to, was this Dave Held? Is that what you said, Tara?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
He was one of a couple who sent back some comments.
I'm sympathetic to his point that it's not a farce, but it's not far from a farce if you have people testifying against something, right? That's a foregone conclusion, right? If everything if all the criteria are met, and then it is incumbent upon this commission to approve the application.
Mhm.
Right? We know this.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
Well,
the
if somebody
public hearing-
has, it give somebody, if they have a reason that shouldn't happen, if we don't have a public hearing to notify them that this is being decided upon, they wouldn't have the knowledge to come in and state their reason, what their reasons are that it should not be done. But I also agree with it. It's a waste of time. I was just thinking of the 363 Aquatic Town Farm Road. That wasn't a subdivision, but we had more people bitching up and down about things that had nothing to do with what we were deciding on that gravel bank.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they
And I
come in
think
thinking
that
they
is the
can-
point,
they-
which is, do you actually do more? And this is an actual question I'm asking.
right.
Do you actually do more harm by presenting the idea that complaint about something that you don't like as a neighbor can have an effect on an application that is legally presented and correct to the specifications of the commission? Do you create more harm in that if you bring your complaints and the response of this commission is, well, we hear what you're saying, but the regulations say this must go forward? you know, if I'm an angry abutter and I'm concerned that, you know, my viewscape is going to be disturbed, and I bought with the expectation that I would have this woodlot there, I actually have no legal right to expect that woodlot to be there if I don't own it,
I
right?
was gonna say, you should have bought the woodlot if you wanted to make sure it was gonna stay there.
Well, exactly, right? So, you know, and this is a topic that comes up elsewhere, of course, when I read some of these forums, that, you know, the public hearing process is very, very well intended, but not super useful or informative for anyone. You know, I mean, think about how they go, right? The public hearing opens and people direct all kinds of questions to you. You're not really supposed to answer them. Right? And then they close, and they close the comments, and they feel like they haven't been answered. And then you deliberate, and all you're really deliberating on is the quality of the application in front of you based on the facts. So what does anybody gain? And again, I am not actually making the argument one way or the other. I'm sort of on the devil's advocate path here. You know, but there is status quo bias toward the public hearing process because it is your practice. So I guess that's what you guys have to wrap your heads around and decide.
Yeah.
Assuming that the statute doesn't require it.
Right. And that was exactly, I mean, that was sort of my point. And I just had another thought in my head, and it has escaped.
Not a senior citizen, he's always got that problem.
We've all got birds in our heads sometimes.
But yeah, sorry. So if someone else has something to say, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, so what David Held was saying is if somebody wants to do a subdivision, does everything, the way I'm trying to put my head around this is if it's all within the requirements of what's in our regulations in that, then the public hearing becomes mute because it ain't gonna serve a purpose.
Yeah, right. And so, okay, I remembered what I was gonna say, that, right, if the purpose of the public hearing has been to notify abutters, well, then we can simply notify abutters. That doesn't seem to be a problem. But then the next step of it is, if we're notifying them, to what end, right? Just so they know? Because if they truly can't affect the outcome, then, you know, so they get this notification, but they can't do anything about it. And
They don't realize it.
I'm sorry, say that again, Dave?
And they don't realize it, and it just creates hostility.
Yeah.
Correct.
So again, I'm not, like Terry said, I'm not, pro abolishing these public hearings or not. I'm just, for what I'm trying to make sure that they logically make sense, or that there's some sort of logic in our decision about them.
I certainly think that you can justify notification regardless, because it allows, even if it doesn't allow an abutter to obstruct the process because there's no legal means to do so, maybe that abutter would be interested in buying the adjacent woodlot, right? To preserve that gives them an opportunity for communication, transaction, gives them the opportunity to decide if they want to move. It gives them the opportunity to think their way through it and to prepare themselves for what is going to happen. And I think that's probably a legitimate enough reason for notification. I think it's just responsible, for a disturbance of that scale. The custom certainly has been that notification has been for public hearing purposes, but that's the crux of this whole discussion. To what end? What does it do for you?
Probably need the chair to read a short and sweet statement on if the parameters are met, that we have to approve it. This is just an informational meeting for your part, and if you have any legal reason that this should not go forward, it give you a chance to speak your piece.
You know, I've been trying to find the state statutes on my other computer and I can't, I can't bring them up. Are you sure this isn't run by state statute that you have to?
No, I'm not sure, Cindy.
Yeah.
That's why this is sort of a provisional
Yeah.
discussion.
Did
If I'm
David-
just taking David's comment as presented, what is clear is that re-subdivision must have a public hearing. He states that, he acknowledges it.
Exactly, yeah.
So the implication on the rest of his comment is that the fact that we require a public hearing is not supported by the statute, but I will confirm that,
Well,
tomorrow at the office. That's fine. So this is a provisional discussion, but you should know which way you want to go if it turns out that there's no legal reason you had to do this.
how could you not, how could you think about not letting the neighbors know that this is going on?
Nobody's
I just
thinking about
can't-
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
Okay.
that's the point, Cindy, right? A public hearing seems like an unnecessarily onerous way of notifying, right? We can require notification without requiring a public hearing.
Yeah, but then if you do that, what's the point of giving a notification if you're not gonna do a public hearing? Because they can't say anything about it anyway. They can't
Well-
come in. So I don't know, maybe you should just wait till we check the
Mr.
state statutes. That's all.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Mr. Lanky.
my thought on that would be is if, like you just said, is if we give them a notification, so at least they can feel that they, instead of having a notification for a public hearing, I mean, if somebody wanted to build behind me, he's got to notify me anyway. So if it's in a written notice, at least it gives me the opportunity to say to him, well, I'd rather buy that little section behind you instead of him building a house in it, like he just said before, Mr. Blackmer, or in that. I think a written notification should suffice. It's giving the people the opportunity that whoever owns this land that wants to create a subdivision or whatever the case may be, you're giving it to them in a written form. Now, if it can bring about a public hearing, if they decide to request one on a butter or whatever, then we could have the public hearing, if that made any sense.
It's an interesting point, John. Can the public just request a public hearing
Correct.
optionally?
I mean, for an example, I'll use Mr. Blackburn. He owns land behind me, okay? And all of a sudden he decides he's gonna develop it or whatever. Well, if I decide he notified me or the commission, then I have the right to go to him personally or request a public hearing, because I mean, to bring it to a public hearing and say this, and if we have a difference of opinion, I could fight it all, we could fight it back and forth for the next 3 months of meetings like we did with 363. I mean, we went through 3 meetings that were
You're breaking
unnecessary.
up, John.
Huh? I'm
You
breaking
can
up.
turn your end,
I think
Alvin.
that's,
I can hear him
yeah, I think
fine.
that's your connection, Alvin.
But that's how I'm looking at it. But the thing is the person that owns the land, yes, if he wants to turn it into a subdivision, I might not like it, but the point is if I don't want nothing built behind me, I'll buy the piece of property, if it's an acre or 2 or whatever it's gonna take. I mean, at least you're giving notification, but to bring it to a public hearing right off the bat, or create a public hearing, I think we just, this could be spinning our wheels for nothing, I think of just a notification by mail or whatever we're supposed to do to the abutters or whatever, I think should be sufficient. But if I want a public hearing, then it's up to me to write a letter or bring it to the CEO, to bring it to the commission to have a public hearing for, excuse me, for whatever thoughts.
Suppose, John, I
I'll just use
Don't-
it as an example,
oh,
Randy.
well, I think it's a good example because I do have the land right behind you.
I know
But
you
suppose
do.
I don't talk to you at all and I decide that I'm gonna develop it and at least this way it's official that you've been notified that I'm gonna develop it. And if there's a reason that shouldn't be developed, like there's Indian antiquities or something out there,
Correct.
they give you a chance to get all this in the record.
Correct.
Now, and I'm here again, I'm with Tyra, I'm being a devil's advocate on this because going back to the 363 thing, we wasted 3 months on that.
Correct. Yeah, but
Could we-
I mean, never mind the loss of time, the loss of goodwill,
correct.
Yeah.
because the whole process built on the idea that the public can obstruct a legally acceptable application.
And all the requirements were met. And matter of fact, the people that own the land, you know, we won't bring their names in because we don't have to, but they met all the requirements and they went beyond, above and beyond on a lot of recommendations by some of us on the commission that they didn't really have to do. So, you know, I mean, we didn't, you know, it was almost like putting them behind the 8 ball, and you could see their point of frustration. But it was just that the people in that area didn't want no gravel mining, you know, I mean, if somebody owns acreage, you know, that's their right to do it, you know, as long as they followed the guidelines. And that's what was, you know, that, like I said, everything was above and beyond, and they stayed within the guidelines that was set. Recommendations and extra recommendations. And the whole process went through good, nicely, you know. It wasn't that they were trying to beat around a bush and see what they could sneak away, but it was followed through. The Inland Wetlands Commission followed through on everything, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, I don't think it was a bad thing, but I think it should, you know, your butters should be notified by written thing. And if they want to request a public hearing, then that they have that right to do that. That's, I think, is a good process, or a simple process, in my opinion.
John, why don't we do more with the notification?
Yeah,
Spelling out through transparency exactly involved. And maybe even on the notification, do you accept, would you want a public hearing?
well,
And then
yeah,
Cindy would know of the 8 or 9 or whatever it is, people on that particular subdivision, you know, she'll be able to notify the commission that out of the 10 people that were notified, 8 of them rejected it. Then you'd want a public hearing. So if it ever went to court, you know, the town has covered their openness about what is being transformed in that subdivision, what it means to the adjoining, to the property owners.
Yeah,
I
let
think
me
we could
ask
do
a
more.
variation. Let me ask a variation on that question, because I think you're getting to something, Alvin, and I think it's a good start. What if, and I think this actually falls outside the regulations per se, I think we're now talking about developing a template for notification that spells out
Right.
not just, you know, property owner A is doing X on his lot next to yours, but this is what this notification means. And maybe it's not offering the option of a public hearing. And so let's assume for a second that you want to stick with the idea of a public hearing, just for the sake of argument, and status quo and precedent and whatever. A public hearing is going to be scheduled. at this public hearing, the public has the right to speak. The commission is obligated to approve applications that conform to the regulations,
Correct.
right?
I like
So
that.
saying very clearly that you may speak, the purpose of your speaking is not to affect a legal application, but to give opportunity for the developer to adjust his plan. The developer has no obligation to adjust his plan, right? So it spells out more clearly. And again, I think this is outside of the regulations exactly, and is like an action item for us, and maybe something we want, you want to discuss as an action item for the ZEO in the commission at some point. But so now a second point, which is, a rhetorical question. If Randy decides to build a single house or use his property to extend his agriculture, both of which are simple permit, either as of right or, zoning permit only activities, does he have any obligation to notify John that he's going to do it?
Not really.
Right. So even if you
But
decide that you hate it, that's
Okay.
just the way it is.
Right here, I got it, the state statute.
Okay, lay it on us.
The commission may hold a public hearing regarding
May.
any subdivision proposal if, in its judgment, the specific circumstances require such action. No plan of subdivision shall be acted upon by the commission without a public hearing.
Okay,
So, yeah, the commission shall
that's
approve,
weird.
modify, improve it, yeah.
First they say may, and then they say you can't do it.
Well, no,
can't-
that's re-subdivision.
Oh, re-subdivision. Okay.
That's re-subdivision, which we've known.
Okay,
So that does support the point that David made. So the ball is back in your court. As
But
to
how about
what-
notification for a subdivision?
What was that? You're asking me, Alvin? Notice of
the
the deci-
notification requirement?
Oh, okay, so the commission shall approve, modify, and approve or disapprove any subdivision or subdivision
break up-
application or maps and plans submitted therewith, including blah, blah, blah. Violation of this section, okay. Notice of this decision of the commission shall be published in a newspaper having a substantial circulation in the municipality and addressed by certified mail to any persons applying to the commission under the section. Okay, I guess if anybody has called you, I guess what this is saying is that anybody has contacted you, you have to let them know in writing what your decision was. Yeah, this is very long, guys, so
Yeah. So
you have
the
to.
the Cliff's Notes version is that it's up there.
What was that?
Pretty
again?
much.
Yeah, but you have to publish, whether you have a public hearing or not, you still have to publish your decision.
Hmm.
But that's okay. I mean, that's still notification.
Right, right.
We do that anyway. We do that.
Okay,
anyway,
so-
right?
so how does John let the commission know that there's an Indian burial ground in back of his property that's on my property, and I shouldn't be disturbing it?
Good
Well,
point.
that could be part of the notification. That information would go back to Cindy. It's part of the transparency in the notification. In other words, they have an opportunity to write their objection right there prior to any public hearing.
So what you're saying in this, even though you're not going to require a public hearing, you still want that person, that applicant for the subdivision to contact people within 500 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, well, at least I think that's what everyone's saying.
Yeah, and
Well,
I think that would arguably extend the, like, we want everyone notified, not 3 or more, we want everyone notified.
Well, yeah, that goes to say, because you can take that subdivision and you could only have maybe 7 people within that 500 feet, or you could have 10 people within that 500 feet, I mean, normally it's usually 250 feet from your plot, what we call your boundary line, so like me, I have, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people here that are within 200 or 300 feet of me. So I would have to notify them. And 500 feet really covers a big area, a wider
Yeah.
spectrum. But it's just that if you give them the notification, and I just threw that in as an example, so everybody's got an idea, and it also relates. And I'm saying that it all relates back to 363, which to me has opened this whole can of worms about, well, okay, how are we going to address this going forward? And this is only one way. Okay, notify the abutters, tell them this is this, and if somebody comes along like me, all right, I want to have a public hearing. Okay, we got the Indian burial ground, we got this, or we got a wolf's den thing down that Mother Nature's said that was there, so you got a den of wolves living there. You're not going to disturb that. You kind of have to leave it alone. It's just it's all the little stuff that comes in, and it could prolong this thing, and then the developer, whatever, they'll you're frustrating them.
And so one of the other things you have to get straightened out, and I guess you would straighten this out with the advice of the town attorney. If you're accepting an application, if you hear an application, you're accepting it 1 month, there's a timeline for those applications. So if you decide at that meeting that you're going to have a public hearing, what does that do with your required timelines? So you have to check that out.
What's it, 65 days?
Yeah, something like 65 days. So if at a
Yeah,
meeting,
right here in decisions.
yeah, right. So at a meeting, if you say, okay, well, we have to have a public hearing, so then you're extending it. So
Oh.
you'd have to check that out and see how that works out legally with your time limitations.
That 65 days, Cindy, doesn't begin with the application. It begins with the commission.
Right. So you're going to take it. So you take it in the March meeting, and then in March you decide, oh, we got all these letters, we got these people, we really have to have a public hearing on this. So now that's 35 days that have gone by. So now you're down, so you have to make a decision at that next public hearing? No, you close the public hearing, then you have the time to make the decision.
And then
Okay.
after you close the public hearing, I
Yeah.
think you have 35 days
Yeah,
more
yeah,
after that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Without requesting a special extension from.
Extension, yeah. Okay. I think it's just something that you really need to check, when you do it that way. So I guess what I'm saying, it doesn't make any difference with small subdivisions. I certainly agree, but when you get into something big, I just think that neighbors need to know what's going on. But
So-
it's just
Cindy,
me.
to be clear, I don't think anyone disagrees with you. I think we are all supporting notifying all of the abutters, right? I would say, so if it's my understanding is that if it's a 2-lot subdivision and there wasn't a public hearing, abutters wouldn't be notified, right?
Right.
Correct.
Notify everyone. I say if it's a 1 or 2-lot subdivision, notify everyone. I'm
Everybody,
for more
okay.
notifications. I just wonder if requiring a public hearing to notify people makes sense.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Mr. Chairman. I mean, 2-lot, what if it's 2-lot subdivision or 10-lot or a 20-lot subdivision, it's a subdivision. If we want to start sitting here and getting down, it's just as long as they're notified. To the whole bottom line is just to notify the abutters what's going on.
So here's an idea. So we're talking about this template of notification, which isn't strictly speaking something you would include in your regulations per se. But if we develop such a template of notification. We could in fact include it as an appendix in this document and refer to it, you know, that this is what these notifications look like. This is what you should expect to be sending. And this is what you, if you're an interested person reading them, you know, what happens if somebody's putting a subdivision next to my house? You know, it's an excess of of transparency about the process, but I think one that might be more instructive than what we've done thus far.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all.
I'm gonna have to agree with that.
Okay. All right, I think we flogged that horse for the purposes of this meeting. So when I make my adjustments to this, I've been using this general format so that you can look at it either with no edits or with edits. So you'll see, you know, wherever I propose language, we're going to come back to everything to discuss after there's a sort of a version 2 draft. So this was my note, and I think Cindy may have already answered this for me. The failure of the commission to act within the prescribed time shall be considered as an approval, and the certificate to that effect shall be issued by the commission on demand in accordance with section 8-26. And I think, Cindy, you already confirmed for me that that's
Yes.
correct, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay. So I'm
yes.
gonna delete the note. Okay. All right. This was just, I think, a semantic note. Completion of any required road drainage or other subdivision improvements. I would suggest that that's actually public improvements or maybe infrastructure improvements. Because the subdivision improvement, I mean, from the purposes of land use, subdivision is quote unquote an improvement. It's not a quality goal. So I'm going to say infrastructure improvements. Okay, what do we got here? Presentation of a copy of an approved permit from the Connecticut Department of Transportation for any proposed street or storm drainage system, which joins with the state highway. Oh, okay. All right, I see. I'm reading this poorly. And these are what? These are, the commission approval shall include and be conditioned upon the following as applicable. Presentation of a copy of an approved permit from the Connecticut Department of Transportation for any proposed street or storm drainage system which joins with a state highway. Driveway construction permit for each proposed lot issued by the Board of Selectmen, indicating that the applicant is familiar with the regulations contained in the Town of Thompson Driveway Ordinance and will construct such driveways in conformance with the specification set forth in the ordinance. My comment is only to make a note to include shared drives. Here's again a comment from David. It would be less cumbersome to require as part of the application and review process that the first selectman or public works director review the plan and approve the driveway locations. If the lots are not intended for immediate sale or development, it seems inappropriate to require securing an actual driveway construction permit for every lot. That seems reasonable to me. What do you guys think?
Sounds reasonable.
Does anybody take any issue with reconstructing that phrase accordingly?
So you would use David's words?
No, well, something that gets the same point across. Alvin, you should know I never use anyone's words but my own.
You just refine them a little better, that's all.
Would you have to define a time? The way it's written from him, it's, if they're not, I can't see because there's.
I know it's tiny, huh? I can probably make that big.
No, Cindy's right where it is. I gotta move Cindy, okay.
Get out of the way, Cindy.
I'll
She
leave.
hasn't moved.
I mean, would we know if they're not intended for immediate sale or
Well, I mean, if you're selling as a lot instead of as, I mean, if you're subdividing and just selling the lots for people to build their own, then it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily know what they're doing with their individual lot, right? I mean, not everybody builds pre-builds in a subdivision.
Right.
Yeah.
So something in a bad market, a lot could be on the market for months, years.
So instead of getting the state permit, they just have the selectmen or Public Works.
Well, there's two things there. There's the CONDOT permit for any proposed street or storm drainage system which joins the state highway, semicolon, driveway construction. The driveway construction permit is a separate item. And that's the one that David Held is specifically addressing here.
Actually, if I may, if you don't have the driveway laid out beforehand, somebody may get stuck if they cannot get a driveway permit from the state later on. If they
That's
do,
not a bad point.
I was thinking about it just a little bit different than that. Suppose I've got a series of lots laid out and one of them has a real poor access to, whether it's a town road or a state road. We'll say state road just for the sake of discussion. And so I just, when I submit my subdivision plan, I don't submit that as to being developed, but there should be some kind of plan for that lot if it can't have access to the highway, because you know somewhere down the road somebody's going to want to sell it, buy it, build on it or something. Probably didn't make myself clear.
No, I think you did. I think everyone's thinking about it, Randy, judging from the expressions on everyone's faces.
I think it's down there beforehand.
What is the, I mean, pardon my ignorance, but why is it more onerous to get a driveway construction permit issued by the Board of Selectmen than?
It's not a permit. What he's suggesting is review the plan and approve the locations. In other words, there's no permit issued there. So I think that actually mirrors maybe what Mike and Randy are suggesting, that something needs to be proposed. It doesn't necessarily need to be permitted at that time. I think that's the crux of what David is saying.
Gotcha. And then
Feasible.
later they would apply for a permit according to the approved location.
Or if they were going to change the location, if it was feasible to do so, but whatever, at least there's at least one feasible location for a drive.
Gotcha.
And that's the implication to me. Dave, you look like you're considering this.
I don't know how many of you can picture this, but if you go toward Quinnebog past my house, there's two houses and then there's a significant curve in the road to the right. And somebody wanted to build a house in there, but the access onto the state highway was such that they were going to have to excavate off the whole corner in order to have visibility to come off that that lot onto the highway.
You're talking that, what was that?
It used to be
These
Charlie Jim's.
Yes, Charlie Jim's place. Thank you. I was just thinking of it. Yeah, you're right. They would have to almost take that whole bank down just to make it. Except, didn't he try to put a road in there? Whoever was supposed to wanted to build something up in the back there, Randy?
Well, there's a road cut in there, but it's not, I mean, it's just a field road. It's not a driveway or whatever at this point. There's a curb, no curb cut. It's just drive up over the curb and up across the tracks and
Right.
up into the
Yeah,
woods.
okay. Yeah, you're right. That to put something up there, to put a house up there or towards the pack over the railroad tracks. That's a big cut. That would require a lot of planning, especially with the state. Yes.
So the point being, if that was the lot that somebody didn't apply for a driveway now, 10 years down the road, somebody's gonna wanna do something with that lot, and that, you don't develop the land unless it made into conservation land or something.
Right.
Where that lot is, you gotta have access to develop it sometime.
Yeah, the lot's useless.
Right,
Right.
which, but that just spent a lot of money on that they can't do anything with.
Correct.
I think the thing, Tara, I'm having a problem with is it's almost two things. You've got the Connecticut Department of Transportation for the proposed street drainage, blah, blah, blah. And I'm almost feeling like the driveway construction is like, should be E. Yeah, it's almost like too inclusive into that Department of Transportation.
Well, I
That's
think
what I'm
that
trying to
caused a
wrap my head
couple of
around.
people confusion while they
Yeah.
were reading it, for sure.
Yeah,
I agree with David.
Yeah,
With David.
okay.
but I agree with Randy. I mean, that's a great example right there.
So I guess the binary choice is, are you requiring a permit or are you requiring proposed locations? Because this is a permit, and this comment says just DPW or the select board or whomever is appropriate just needs to say, yes, what you've shown us is feasible. And then they can pull the permit whenever.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you have something like Madison who's building, who has a subdivision, they're building it, so they have to get their driveway permits. But if you have somebody who's just coming in to subdivide their land because they want to do it, but they don't have buyers for it yet, how do you make them get a driveway ordinance? Wouldn't you just have them show the driveways on the plan?
Yeah, but if you showed a driveway on that corner that I'm saying, in my example, it would give the P and Z the reason to say, well, how are you gonna access this lot?
Right, so
Right.
no, I'm actually referring to E, I'm not referring to D. Whatever has to happen with the Connecticut Department of Transportation, you gotta do that, but I'm talking about E. If you're just subdividing your land for someone to come by and build,
If you're subdividing your land for future sale, which would,
right?
otherwise you wouldn't subdivide the land in the first place, you can't stick the prospective buyer with a bad lot without an approved driveway
Okay.
access.
All right, no, yeah, that's, what I'm doing is I'm thinking of Shields here because we gave them a subdivision. Or I don't know if it was a re-subdivision or whatever, but somebody literally actually bought either the 3 or 4 lots. Well, that guy, that Bart guy, he bought all their lots.
He
So-
bought all the lots, or
They're
No,
digging
he actually bought all the lots. It was hard figuring it out, but he did. He's only using one of the lots to build his house, but he does have the other lots there. He did buy it. I found that out the other day. So what did we make him do? What did we make Shields do on that subdivision? Which I don't know. I don't have the answer to it. I have to
well,
look
it
at
was
those.
just, we made him move his house. I mean, we allowed him to build his garage, not in front of his house, but.
No,
in
no,
front of-
no, no. I'm not talking about Bark. I'm not talking about the gentleman who bought the property. I'm talking about when you gave Shields his subdivision, when you approved his subdivision.
On Fabian Road.
Yeah,
think
right.
that
And that was a
was-
long time, that was a year or so, or a couple of years ago.
Well,
That's-
he's got
yeah.
one rear lot, right? And then this was the
Right.
first one. What is it,
Well-
2 more lots?
I think there's 3. There's 3 in the front there. I can
Yeah,
check it
2
when I get to the office. I can check and see what we made him do for the
Those were just
driveway and,
Those
stuff like that.
driveways and we didn't do anything with it.
yeah. Right, because he was just subdividing his land.
But
Yeah.
but hindsight is 20/20 also.
Yeah, they wanted this, they wanted it approved as a subdivision, everything, because their intention was to sell the property off. So if they had everything up front that was done, it would have been, would have been easy to sell.
Mm.
And from my understanding of the recollection of that meeting of that night.
Mm.
Matter of fact, him and his wife were there, and she
Mhm.
was the one that was doing most of it. She
She's the
owns,
one- Yeah,
she's
the
the
one that
shield,
owns.
she's a Shields, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Right
is the
across the-
general consensus of the commissioners present at this meeting that showing proposed driveway locations for approval by, and I'm going to, say DPW, not by the select board. What is the select board going to do with it? Is the reasonable and appropriate measure,
yeah, well,
as,
Yeah,
as
sounds good to
opposed to
me.
pulling a full permit,
Yeah,
which is what.
yeah, but yeah, that's a good idea, because now it gives us it's giving us a good presentation of what they want to do with that piece of land for a subdivision. So if you got all of that little stuff in place, it makes, and I might be out of bounds on this, but I feel that it would make my decision a little bit easier, knowing that this is their intention. Or if they decide to sell it all to somebody else that wants to come in and buy it all, you got the plan in place, and that other developer or whoever that's buying it all wants to follow through, then reason he's buying it is because it's all in place, and he can come in and as a re-quote me on this, as a re-subdivision or whatever. He might want to change it a little bit, but at least it's in place. So we don't have to go, he doesn't have to go through jumping through hoops or whatever the case may be, or how many times you want him to go around the merry-go-round or something, we're trying to eliminate all of that.
I like the way that Rich has got the sign off on it. It comes to us,
Yeah.
Rich has looked at it too.
The intention is good, but unless it's signed off,
Right.
Okay, I think I can work with that in here. I'll create something that you guys can look at later.
You do a good job.
All right, what's the next one I got here? Another comment from David, and this is, again, things that commission approval shall include and be conditioned upon the following as applicable. Where the subdivision involves construction of improvements or excavation, grading, or depositing of materials in a special flood hazard area, presentation of a copy of certificate of compliance by the building official of the town of Thompson. And again, this is David's comment, and I have no idea. Cindy, I think this is, again, your purview. This would typically be associated with infrastructure in the development, not houses. This is not the purview of the building official. This should probably be removed. Does that seem correct to you,
Correct.
Cindy?
I'm sorry, I left the room. I don't know where you're at. I apologize.
That's okay.
That's not within the purview of the building official, no.
So you
that'd
think
be,
this should
Carolyn,
be struck, Alvin?
exactly.
Okay. I love progress. I love striking things. It's the best. We've got no received comments on any of this. I hate the way this formatted. This is all when I converted it to Word from PDF. That was it for Article 3, guys. Do you guys, we were only an hour and a half. Does anybody want to go back and revisit any of these points? We've got each other till 9 if we want it. Alternately, did anybody come up with any additional comments in reading the article prior to the meeting?
I have something for Mrs. Dunn, but it could be a, what we just discussed tonight about, the state highway and putting in an improved driveway or whatever. Have you taken a ride down to, in Quinnipiac there? That address I gave you, I think it's 373. Is it 373 Quinnipiac Road there? Right after the variety store? In Quinnipiac or
Yeah.
on the right?
Further
Yeah,
along,
it's got
I'm
all kinds-
441, so.
Fourth or whatever it is, he was running an excavator the other day, working on the end of his driveway right at the highway, putting in a, thing to the road off and on.
So is on
He put in
Quinnipiac
a
Road.
stone- Was putting in a stone, what do you call it? Apron between his driveway and onto the state road.
All right,
Does he have
gonna-
any permits down there to do what he was doing?
Okay, I have 3 site visits tomorrow morning, so I'll just add that to my 4th one.
I brought that to your attention once before when he's got all kinds of equipment there. He's got everything. Now he's running a business out of there.
Actually, I think I did go down there.
Yeah.
His house is he's got like two garages way in the back or something.
One, it's a what do you call it? One of them steel framework with the canvas on it, but it's like 14 feet high and about 20, almost 25 feet, 26 feet wide by maybe 32 or so feet deep. And he redid everything, but he's been Healy, his name is Healy. What's his name? The one on the right.
Behind the variety store, behind the package?
No, past the variety. It used to be Beano's Variety Store. Now it's called Quinnipiac Variety. If you go down the hill, go down towards where across from the old Fabian School. What do we call it? The American.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did go there. I did go
Yeah,
there.
well, you better go take. Yeah, you better go back there and take another look. That's all I'm going to tell you. It was
Okay.
brought to my attention twice this week by some people.
Great.
And you take a look at what's being done over there. And he's supposed to be, and he's running up, and he's got a construction, Dean Construction, is it called?
He's a septic place. That's Slim Source Service. He bought the house from Chelsea.
Something like that, yeah.
Thank you, John. Good work on Article 3. Thank you everyone for the discussion and comments today. Item 3 on our agenda is to determine the schedule for subcommittee meetings.
Well, that's just been on there. I mean, the doodle polls have been working. The only thing, I know.
Based for them.
John loves the doodles. The only awkwardness about that is that I hate to have multiple doodles out for the same commission at any given moment. So I haven't sent one out for the actual regs review that we keep talking about. So I mean, I'm always willing to make more than one, but my feeling is that gets odd, confusing.
Yeah, we do have an extra Monday this month. So I don't know if we could set something up for March 29th
For the reg review.
yeah.
Well, for either, but yeah, that's probably a good one for the regs review, actually.
And why don't we do that? Because then I have time to pull the rest of it together. Because yeah, a lot of my time has been taken up with this Merrick situation on Plum Road.
So do we just want to declare it so and then send out an
Great.
agenda?
Yeah.
That would be great.
Okay.
And then a doodle for this.
Yeah, we'll doodle this and we'll just declare a date for the regs review for the 5th Monday of this month. I love that. I love
All right.
clarity.
March 29th. All right, I'm gonna write it down. That doodle doodle. I'm writing my own doodle.
Somebody's got to get you a Labradoodle for your next dog.
Yeah. Don't get smart. I got enough dogs now. I don't need any more.
It's okay. I have all the cats.
You can have, well, I don't mind cats. They take care of themselves. And I'm not a cat lover.
Has there been any word about going back live too? Any
There
about that?
hasn't been any word yet. I imagine what is going to happen is that a decision is going to come out of the selectman's office. I got to say, guys, and I know that, and I've said this before, and I know others have said other things. From the point of view of a person who often has 4 of these a week, Zoom is like my savior. There's a huge difference in terms of the kind of attention I'm able to pay and the kind of scheduling I'm able to do if we are remote. As you know, I also don't really think that we gain anything by meeting in person, aside from the fact that we all like each other, which is amazing, but we do. I think that the online meetings are more civil. I think they're more easy to manage. I think there's 0 chance anybody is going to get up in the audience and shoot you. You know.
Hey, our
But I
governor's on
understand
MSNBC, guys. Sorry.
Is he telling us we should meet remotely forever? Because
No, no, I don't
that
know
would make
because I
me
don't have
happy.
it on. Let's see. Different in your mind and a bunch of other business. Let's see. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, it was fine. I was just blapping on my usual point, which is that I actually think this is much better. But
And I like in person better. I want to get up. I want to get out of this house.
Yeah, well, speaking of the governor, I know that March 19th, I think, is a date where some new guidances are going to be released.
75%. They'll be able to open it,
Mhm.
and you won't have to wear a mask or anything. They're gonna.
well, no, you still have to wear masks. That's
Well,
not, that
what they
hasn't
mean
gone
by
away.
that is, the the CDC is still saying wear a mask, do this. Now, it's gonna be up to the individuals, but me, I prefer if I'm gonna, I'll keep my 6 feet, I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with that. I'll still wear my mask, but, like you just said, we spent almost a year on these Zoom meetings, and it took us a while to get the hang of it, and it seems like we're getting better and better at it, but, everybody has their preference. Me, I don't care. If I sit in a room with 13 people, or I sit here at my desk with a nice cold drink and still do the same thing.
I think you can probably expect that there will be adjusted guidelines after the 19th, as Joe says.
Yeah, it's coming.
So yeah. So thank you for that question, Dave. So we'll have a doodle for the next subcommittee meeting. We've got a meeting scheduled for the regs review on March 29th. If there's nothing further, then I will move on to item 4 and allow ourselves to end a meeting early for once.
Yay!
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman. I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Lenke, seconded by Mr. Krogel to adjourn, which we will do at 8:36. I'm gonna stop.